And we are recording with Dr. Murray Sabrin
Say,
on Sabrin, Thursday, May 11th, 2023 at 2:29 p.m. Eastern Time. So I've had to apologize to Dr. Sabrin multiple times. So anyone that's ever done this podcast knows that part of my morning routine is wake up, make my bed, gym, shower, meditation slash prayer. Got to do it. It's non-negotiable. And I always meditate for exactly 30 minutes. And I've been doing it since 2008, almost every day without failure. And meditation is a weird exponential thing where the longer you stay in it, and it's kind of the antithesis of meditation, is you're supposed to sort of drop all these structures about you know progress and achievement, and it's supposed to just go further and further inward. But because I am an overachiever, I often look at meditation as progress and how high did I score. And as you get closer and closer in to whatever you want to call it, the breath, God, oneness, self, whatever you want to call it, you get more and more out of it, where you feel refreshed for the rest of the day. And the last 2 minutes of meditation can get you more of that battery charged feeling than the prior 28 minutes. It goes up exponentially. And a problem I've always had in the 15 years I've been doing it is when you do it for exactly 30 minutes, your internal clock starts to go, when's the alarm going to go off? When's the alarm going to go off? And there's a lesson in not thinking about the alarm, forgetting the alarm and just focusing on the breath. Then you'll go deeper and deeper and deeper, and it'll be great. But so many times I'd open my eyes, like just glance at the clock, and it's, whatever, 4 minutes left. And well, you've kind of ruined the rest of the meditation, because now you're like, is it 4 minutes left? Is it 3 minutes left? You're just sitting there with your eyes closed, and it ruins it. So there's a lesson in not looking at the clock, much like an athlete or something. In my mind, I'm always like, go to the bell, go to the drill. And I was sitting there before this, and my whole morning was off, so I texted Dr. Sabrin and said I'll be 10 minutes late, which means that I should have set my alarm for 2:10 instead of 2. And I'm sitting there and I'm going deeper and deeper, and it's really getting relaxed. Your shoulders are starting to drop. And I keep thinking, like, the alarm hasn't gone off. And I'm like, no, go to the alarm. Don't. I'm going in, and I'm like, this is really like I'm getting in. I feel good. And then I start going like, this alarm's not going off. And I was like, and the deeper you go into meditation, the slower time goes by subjectively. So that often means it's a good meditation. But finally, something just goes off in my mind, and I go, I've been here forever. And I open my eyes and I look and it says 2:19, and I'm 9 minutes late. I never set the alarm. So I freaked out, and that's why we're starting 30 minutes late. So with that, Dr. Sabrin, I apologize. I can't remember the last time I have not set an alarm. So I don't know if that's good news, if that's bad news, if that's a bad omen, if I'm finally losing my mind. But with that 3 minute and 42-second monologue, I'll shut up now. Dr. Sabrin, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. It's starting to get summer here in Southwest Florida. We right now it's I think it's let's see, what does it say here? It's now, let's see, it's 92 degrees here. So we're
Woo!
having so it's a heat wave because this is usually July and August temperatures, but now we're having it in mid-May.
I'm in Portland, Maine, and it's 73 degrees in this room. And if I look at it, the time and temperature building, says 90. I don't know how accurate that is. It says 90. And I am learning that I haven't lived in New England since 2001, that there's not air conditioning in these buildings. And I did not know that. And I maybe wouldn't have moved into this apartment building if I didn't know there was not air conditioning. So I'm dealing with that. But with the heat wave and all that good stuff is so we were just talking about before this the Trump town hall, which you admit you recorded and didn't watch, and I admit I didn't know what was going on until somebody asked me last night. And we both kind of agreed that Trump has some good points, but he can't seem to get out of his way. Do you think how is that going to carry over into the 2024 election? And will his sort of drama aura, will people be more willing to forgive and forget that because there are such bigger things on the table? The war in
Well,
Ukraine, the southern border,
yeah.
inflation, the economy, on and on.
Yeah, I think Trump positioned himself in 2015 when he first ran for president as the anti-establishment, anti-Washington candidate. And within the Republican Party, the grassroots really liked that message. And so that carried him to victory in not only the primary, but in the general election. So he's still running, I think, as the anti-establishment candidate because he's been criticizing Washington, the deep state, the fake news, as he calls them. And so a lot of people like it because they see the news media are complicit with everything Washington does, whether it's a war, whether it's the immigration issue, whether it's covering for the Bidens, covering for Fauci and the lockdowns. So it goes on and on about what the media are doing. I've been watching the media for a long time, since I was a little kid back in the 1950s. And news media back then was quite good. In fact, it was excellent. They just gave you the things that's you're supposed to learn in journalism school: who, what, when, and where, and then you'd have commentary about why. And then in the early 1960s, there was a major newspaper strike in New York City, and that's when the news really expanded to the hour or more we have at the nightly news between the local and the national news. And then you had 1980, 81, CNN comes in
24.
with the 24-hour news cycle. I used to watch CNN religiously, literally, to get up to date on the news. I haven't watched CNN in ages. Same thing with MSNBC. I used to watch them to get the news.
Yeah.
They are no longer news stations. They are really propaganda organs for the federal government. And to me, that's a sad commentary on where journalism has gone today, because as someone who was a history major and concentrated in social studies education, I'm interested in world affairs, current events, and I want to know what's going on in the world. Just give me the facts and I will interpret them the best I can using the knowledge and skills that I have. But all that's happening now on establishment media is spin. They're spinning for the Democrats for the most part. The Republicans don't have any major outlets in the establishment media. That's why the internet is doing so well. All the various platforms where conservatives and libertarians go to get heard, because the establishment media will not give them a voice. I saw my congressman, a clip today from Southwest Florida, who was on CNN giving them a lesson about why things are not good in America because of Biden's policies. And I just saw about 50 seconds of the clip. That's all they showed. I should get the rest of it on CNN. But I'm surprised that he was on, because he's a staunch Trump supporter. And so I was just kind of baffled to why they would have him on. And so, again, getting facts is something that I desire, because I want to know what is going on. And we're certainly not getting that from the mainstream media. But getting back to Trump, he really made two huge mistakes in his presidency, which I think cost him dearly. One was when he was accused of being a Russian puppet, a Putin fan, and collaborating with the Russians during the 2016 campaign. And still, after he got elected and inaugurated, they were still going after him. What he should have said to the American people, he should have had a nationwide address and saying to the American people, I'm going to appoint Alan Dershowitz, the constitutional attorney from Harvard, retired professor, who voted for Hillary Clinton, and ask him to put together a commission for 6 months to investigate these charges about me and Russia. And if they find that there was no collusion between me and Russia, all the people that said there were should resign from Congress, from the media, from wherever they are. And if they find collusion, I will resign. He could have checkmated his opposition in early 2017 when he took office. Instead, he didn't do that, which shows you that, from my perspective, he's not the stable genius that he says he is, because he got outmaneuvered by the Democrats and the media. The way you have to deal with the media and your opposition politically is to challenge them. And he didn't challenge them. He just basically called them names. And that's not the way you get things done in politics, by calling people names. You have to use what they're saying against them and showing you have the high moral ground. And so he didn't do that. And the next big mistake he made was in 2020 with the lockdowns and only relying on Fauci to give him information about COVID. What he should have said is, this is a serious issue, Dr. Fauci, and I think we should put together a forum, a national forum of people, experts in this field, and have them come and give their perspective on COVID and see what is the best protocol for the American people. And if he had done that, that would have shown his leadership and his statesmanship, because we all know people get second opinions from doctors. And instead, he relied on one person, which is probably the biggest mistake you can make in public policy. You want to hear different voices on a whole host of issues, especially when it comes to healthcare, which is too important to rely on the government or any government official as to what should be doing. Unfortunately, the medical profession dropped the ball also, because they basically took what was from the CDC as gospel and said, well, we're going to have this vaccine eventually. And what are the consequences? What are the adverse consequences for this vaccine? And we now know Pfizer lied in their documents. There are people from Pfizer who are retired now, people from other medical fields who have looked through the documents. Naomi Wolf, the blogger, who's a Democrat, she's been criticized by fellow liberals that she's been criticizing Pfizer and what they've done. But there are people who are getting at the truth about the whole COVID situation, whether it was gain of function research that the United States funded, which is remarkable. Why are we funding research in China? I mean, China has trillions of dollars at their disposal. Why are we funding that? And then there are concerns that the so-called vaccine is really a bioweapon. There are people who have come out and showed that this is not exactly what it's cracked up to be. And the health issues related to the vaccine and the boosters, again, having taken the polio vaccine back in the 1950s, we didn't get any boosters for the polio vaccine. It was one and done. And so why, if this vaccine is so safe and effective, why are so many people dying, have adverse consequences, and why do you need boosters constantly? And so there's something really, quote, fishy about this whole situation. And there are people doing great work at the Brownstone Institute. Jeffrey Tucker has been writing articles. He's been his organization has been publishing books about the subject. Other people have been writing about it. And so I think eventually the whole truth will come out. I think I just read recently that there's a bipartisan commission being formed in Congress to discover where COVID came from. And that would be refreshing, that both Republicans and Democrats will want to know, get at the truth at COVID. And of course, the so-called vaccine, because I don't consider it a vaccine, because now they're saying you should get it every year. Well, that's a flu shot. And if anyone knows anything about the flu shot, we know the flu shot doesn't prevent the flu 100%. People still get the flu. I've spoken to someone, who did I speak to recently? They got COVID 3 times, and I think they were vaccinated. So there's something really not right about this so-called vaccine, because how could you get COVID 3 times if you've already been vaccinated and boosted and all the other protocols that they tell us you need to take in order to protect yourself?
Well, Dr. Sabrin, you're not thinking about the stakeholders of Pfizer. You're looking at the near term. You got to look at the big picture. This is a corporation, and we have fiduciary responsibilities. So we got to jab everybody. We got to jab the dogs. We got to jab corn, everything. For Trump, that first point, I'm 1,000% on. The second point, I'm a little more on the middle ground. And I'm very open about I supported Trump. I know a lot of people think he's the devil incarnate. That's fine. You're an adult. You're allowed to. With the COVID thing, I don't approve of the way he handled it, but I also have to be somewhat fair to him and say, this is how I have to look at it. I've interviewed Dr. McCullough, Dr. Malone, Dr. Freed, Dr. Urso, all of these doctors multiple times. I mean, people that were on Trump's task force, Dr. Malone, Dr. Stephen Hatfield. Dr. Hatfield's on here last week. I've had these people on multiple times. So, I understand that I also have, I'm in a unique position really on this planet to, as a 32-year-old in an apartment building in Maine, I have an unnatural level of access to, the inside of what's going on. And even with all of that, I remember in 2020 on this podcast pretty much saying like, oh, this is the end. This is the end of the world. Like, so I have to be very fair and go, if I was duped and now I can look back with hindsight, I have to lend a little bit of empathy and go, you're POTUS. They come to you. It's very 9/11-esque. It's like there's a new virus. I'm sure someone whispered in his ear, like it's showing very unnatural, protein folding capabilities. This might be a bio. You don't know what's going on, right? In hindsight, we know that Bush was fine on 9/11. At the time, they threw him on Air Force One. They were whisking him around to Offutt Air Force Base. They were flying around. They were refueling. They were having fighter jets, follow crop dusters. It's panic. So with that second point, I'm a little more flexible with Trump, where I'm like, okay, now we look back at it and we know that it's okay. That first point, though, I think you're rock solid. Because if you know the truth, if I get accused of being a rapist, right? If I'm accused of, and I know, as sure as I know that this cheap table is wood, that I am not, I'm going to project that confidence. I'm going to plant my feet and say, all right, Dr. Sabrin, you're saying I'm a rapist. You show me evidence. You show me evidence in a court of law with someone that hates me and hates my podcast, but is a good lawyer. Speaking of Alan Dershowitz, he's been on here before. We could get Alan Dershowitz. You show me the evidence, I'll shut down this podcast. If there's no evidence, you are no longer allowed to go on any speaking tours. You are to resign from every position you have, and you are to stay in your house for the rest of your life.
And pay you a tidy sum for defaming
defamation. I would plant my feet and look you dead in the eyes and go, you do that. And I would do it in front of everyone because I know in my heart of hearts. Now, if you ask me what number is Tom Brady, I'm pretty sure he's number 12, but I also don't follow sports. I maybe wouldn't do that, but I know that. And with that, I think you're dead correct. You stand there, you pull a live press conference and you basically, put your nuts on the table. And I'm with you with that entirely. And he didn't do that. All he did was say fake news witch hunt, which, yeah, man, you do look like a child when you do that. And
no, I mean,
yeah.
Again, having observed politics now for a long, long time, he didn't seem to understand how Washington works. He donated both political parties over the years. He thought himself as a player in politics. He's met presidents over the years. But as far as the inside game of Washington, D.C., I think he was very naive. I thought he basically thought he could overwhelm them with his personality and his bravado, and that's not how it works. And he picked the most horrible people for his cabinet, and not all of them, and his close advisors. I mean, to pick John Bolton as his national security advisor, who was one of the rah-rah persons on the Iraq War.
Demon from hell.
I mean, my goodness. I mean, I don't think he called Ron Paul, who ran for president in 2008 and 2012, who had huge Washington experience with 14 terms in thereabouts.
Always calling to audit the Fed, always calling to stop perpetual war machine.
I mean, it would seem to me that you want to have the ear of somebody, get the voice of somebody who knows Washington inside out. And it just shows you that Trump does not rely on good people to provide him with advice. He was relying on his daughter and son-in-law, not the brightest bulbs in American politics.
No.
And it just shows you another example of why the children of politicians should stay away from Washington as much as possible, because after all, they had a lot of left-wing ideas, and some of that, I think, percolated to Trump. And there's a lot he could have done. There's a lot he did do that was good in terms of deregulation, which is one of the most important things a president can do, freeing up businesses, getting rid of unnecessary regulations. His tax policy was pretty good, but spending exploded under Trump. In addition, here's something that most people don't even remember. In 2019, when the Federal Reserve was raising interest rates to deal with the overheated economy, Trump publicly criticized Powell for raising interest rates, and the Fed lowered interest rates when they should have raised interest rates. And that set the stage for the Fed in 2020 to explode the money supply by 25%. The Fed created trillions of dollars. And for conservatives to say that this is the Biden inflation, it shows you how politicized
Yeah.
and how ignorant they are about
Yeah.
what causes inflation. It's the Fed that in 2020 that exploded the money supply. And so if you really want to call this a presidential inflation,
Then
you've
it's
got
also
to call
Trump.
it the Trump-Biden inflation, because
Trump
the money
bucks.
supply grew up
1,200 Trump bucks.
yeah. I mean, this is what gets me as someone who's devoted my whole life to understanding the Fed and monetary policy and teaching financial history for 35 years. The commentators who talk about Biden inflation are really political hacks. They don't understand the economy. And it's just annoying to hear people with a platform miseducating the American people about this.
And then you go, well, the people that are miseducating are doing it willfully because it's getting them clicks or views, or they
Yeah.
truly think that this is a Biden thing. And I'm with you, man. If we're gonna say this is Biden inflation, then we have to go, well, what about that $1,200 check I got with Donald Trump's signature?
Yeah.
If we're gonna say this is Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan, then why don't we say, well, at least he did it, and he did it sloppy, and we lost 13 Marines, but how come Trump didn't do it? And if you're going to say, well, it wasn't Trump's war, well, then it also wasn't Biden's, and guess what? It also wasn't Obama's.
Yeah.
You know, so how far back are we doing this thing? Is it Bush's? Well, he invaded. Well, how come Clinton didn't zap bin Laden with that drone that was following him in the 90s? Well, whose fault is this? So we either have to draw lines and drop the politicization. And I can say that as someone who was 18 and young and dumb and voted for Obama because I wanted hope and change, as
Yeah.
someone who was 22 and cold calculating pre-med and didn't want Obamacare, so I voted for Romney, as someone who was 26 and I just lost a brother to suicide and wanted everyone to have universal health care, I voted for Bernie in the primaries. I didn't vote in the election. And for someone in 2020 who is watching the country burn down around me and when I'm voting for Trump because this is insane,
Right.
I'm someone who can actually say, I've let my mind be changed, and I try to neuroplasticity. I try to stay. I don't specifically vote every other election just to say that, because that's no actual independent thought. You're still following a pattern. No, but it's okay to go, I was wrong, or new facts have come about, and I've matured as a person, and I've changed as a person. I'm single, and I don't even have a pet. In 10 years, I could very well have a wife and kids, and that would probably change how I vote. But to say it's Biden inflation, sure, it is. But it's also Trump inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time anyone actually gets sort of down to any sort of real, genuine talk, it's you and I talking on a podcast with 17,000 subscribers instead of on a nightly news thing with 25 million where you say those damn liberals or those conservatards, and you're going, well, what do you even do? I think you do what you did, and you don't watch the town hall. You sit down with your wife and watch some DVR shows. That might be the move. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I stopped watching the nightly news on ABC. I used to watch it religiously. I watched it for decades, and then I think in early 2022, there were things that were said by David Muir, the anchor, that just my head exploded. I said, these are not new. This is not news. This is spin. And where are the stories about the Biden administration and their failures? And nothing was there. And so I said, I'm not going to watch them anymore. I'll get my news from the internet, from sites I trust. There are great sites out there, as you're probably well aware of, LouRockwell.com, Mises.org, the Future of Freedom Foundation, antiwar.com. The list goes on and on.
Tommy'sPodcast.com. I mean,
yeah, there are so many great websites that have articles from all over. Conk News, they've been posting my blogs from Substack, my Substack column. And so it's so easy to get basic news. And the New York Post has been great on the Hunter Biden situation. I mean, no one wants to touch that story in the mainstream media. And of course, now the Oversight Committee, the House Oversight Committee, has come up with information about how foreign countries have been foreign oligarchs have been funding money into the Biden family, who have no apparent skills, apparently,
Yeah.
that they could offer to anybody, let alone domestically. Why haven't they done? Why haven't they gotten money domestically? Why, if their skill set is so great for international, why aren't they providing their skills domestically? No one's answering that question.
Well,
And so,
I saw a tweet last night. I was just scrolling through. And I don't even keep Twitter on my phone because, like, the nightly, I've unplugged for. I'm like, it's all cancer, but I do download it to post the podcast, and I give myself I give myself a couple seconds of guilty pleasure, and I scroll through Twitter, and I was looking at it last night, and someone's like, some conservative guy had screenshotted some liberal guy's Twitter, and they're like, oh, Hunter Biden received money from Ukraine. Well, did you know that Jared Kushner received money from Saudi Arabia? And then the conservative guy was saying, "Oh, here comes the left with their whataboutisms." And I'm like, "No, like these should all be examined. If you're receiving money from Ukraine and you're screw them all. Where's this? Oh, this is our guy." And no, are they receiving money from foreign powers? Put it in the spotlight.
yep,
And then,
yep.
I don't know, but to kind of shift wildly because your expertise is in finance. Um, what are we seeing right now with BRICS and the rise of almost an alternative reserve currency, or at least that's sort of the fear, de-dollarization, which is happening at a rate, I believe, 10 times faster or 100 times faster than at any point since before Nixon closed the gold window. And that
Yeah.
could be wild. I could be wildly incorrect on that by an order of magnitude. Um, is this something that was inevitable? Is this something that you can point to and say this is Biden, or is this something that we go, this has been coming for years because of endless foreign wars, printing money, cheap credit, '08, on and on, COVID? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I taught the financial history of the United States, and it was a wonderful course. Students loved it because they got a chance to understand how the American financial system evolved from the colonial days through the American Revolution, the early days of the Republic, and all the panics we had in the 19th century, and then the Panic of 1907, which was the impetus to creating the Federal Reserve, the crash of '29. And then Bretton Woods in 1944, when the major nations got together to create a post-war monetary system, with the dollar being the anchor at $35 an ounce, and all the other nations' currencies being fixed to the dollar. So we had fixed exchange rates
$35
from the end of World War II till 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window, because under Bretton Woods, foreign governments and institutions had the right to exchange their dollars for gold at $35 an ounce. But what was happening in the 1950s and 60s is the United States, the Federal Reserve was creating a whole bunch of money, and during Vietnam, a real bunch of money that caused France and some other countries to call to exchange their dollars for gold. And the gold reserves went from 25 billion at the end of World War II to 9 billion in 1971. So the thing that Nixon should have done was devalue the dollar,
Yeah.
let's say 1/200th of an ounce of gold instead of 1/35th of an ounce of gold, to make the dollar still as good as gold. But instead, he severed the link, making the dollar a fiat currency, and we had fluctuated exchange rates, which, by the way, is the proposal of the monetarists, Milton Friedman and the others, who thought that was the ideal monetary system, having fluctuating exchange rates of a paper money, of a fiat money. Well, here we are more than 50 years later, and that system, I think, is unwinding, even though the dollar is relatively strong against other currencies because they've been inflating as well. So the other thing, the political aspect of this, is if you are the world's reserve currency, you have a lot of impact on world trade and
Mm-hmm.
geopolitics and international
It's a
trade.
big stick.
It's a huge stick, and of course, the last thing the federal government wants, no matter who's in office, is for people not to want dollars, because that means the dollar would decline in value. That translates into higher import prices, because if the dollar declines against the euro and the yen and the yuan, the Chinese currency, that means it would take more dollars to buy foreign goods, and that would increase our rate of inflation. So the federal government wants to have its cake and eat it too. It wants to print dollars to help finance the budget. It wants a strong dollar overseas, so imports are not that expensive, and it wants the rest of the world to demand dollars in terms of treasury bills so we can float our debt. So there is a contradiction in all of these things, and other countries realize that their currency should be less dependent upon the dollar. They should be less dependent on the dollar. And I think we're slowly moving away. And what's telling, last year, 2022, I think, if I remember correctly, central banks loaded up on gold as part of their reserves. In fact, China, I just saw a chart about China. China has quadrupled its gold holdings from 500 tons to 2,000 tons. In fact, I have the article right here from the Mises Institute, and it points out since 2000, it went from 500 tons to 2,000 tons. What that means is that remember, China had hyperinflation after World War II. That's one of the reasons that the communists won easily, because the vast number of Chinese were getting wiped out financially. And so the communists with Mao Zedong said, we're going to stop the inflation. So they stopped the printing of money, and that ended the inflation, and the nationalists moved over to Taiwan and took over Taiwan. Russia had hyperinflation after World War I. Germany had hyperinflation after World War I. So countries have had experience where the currency destruction has led to totalitarianism and economic stability, social unrest, and political chaos. So they don't want to see that happen, because it would be just unnerving for countries to go through that process, especially the horrible consequences of it. They see the Federal Reserve printing so much money that they're worried about their dollar holdings. And that's why they're slowly moving out of the dollar into gold and other hard assets, because you can't print gold, you can't print oil, you can't print timber, you can't print copper. And so that is the origin of money. It was a commodity. It was a commodity, and those commodities increased so slowly that you would never get a general inflation. And that's why I wrote the book, Why the Federal Reserve Sucks, because it explains all that. Murray Rothbard's wonderful monograph, which I read 50 years ago, close to 50 years ago, What Has Government Done to Our Money, which you can read at the Mises.org website, which is probably the best introduction to money and banking anyone can read. And even it's written so well that even Joe Biden and Kamala can understand it. It's written for the average person who doesn't need a PhD in economics. In fact, the PhDs in economics should read it, because what they learn about money is not consistent with what's needed for a free market economy. And so money and banking are the two subjects that the average person doesn't really have a good grasp on, but they know something's wrong when we have this inflation. And some people know it's the Fed. Some people think it's big business, like the left. They think it's big business that causes inflation. So if they think that, then we should have inflation constantly at high rates, because if big business causes inflation, according to the left, then big business has been around for 100 plus years. Prices should always be high. But the problem with American politics and economists is that they really don't understand money and banking. And I've seen this throughout my lifetime, and it's getting worse and worse and worse, because no one's blaming the Fed for this inflation. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal today about inflation, and it talks about supply chain, which of course is a temporary phenomenon. They talk about wages, which go up after the inflation kicks in, and they barely mention the Fed with its zero interest rate policy. That's the reason we have inflation. The Fed created, Tommy, trillions of dollars literally overnight in 2020 to deal with COVID. I mean, you look at the chart at the Federal Reserve of St. Louis website, and it looks like a rocket ship. The supply of money just skyrocketed as the Fed bought literally, I think, $5 trillion in less than a year. $5 trillion of government debt and mortgage-backed securities. And then the geniuses at the Fed scratching their heads why we have inflation. I mean, this is such a fundamental economic financial principle. It's hard to believe that people with PhDs don't understand that their actions cause the inflation.
A couple points on that. Once I'm looking at my description for this episode, I've got your website, your Substack, and your Twitter, and I realized I don't have your book in there. You said it's the
Why the Federal Reserve Sucks, and the other book I wrote, Navigating the Boom Bust Cycle.
Why the Federal Reserve Sucks. Mary Sabrin. Trying to make sure I put it in the description. To me, it's always just like It's a matter of like manners. If I'm gonna have a guest on the show, I'm gonna plug their book. You're giving me time out of your day, you get a plug in the book. So
And
I'm gonna
also
be
my recent book on my memoir about my political journey and my personal journey from coming to
I have
America.
that. I do have that. I do have that from Immigrant to Public Intellectual American Story. I do
Yeah.
have that. I didn't have the Federal Reserve sucks.
Yeah, that was a wonderful book to write because I went into the history of money and banking, and then went into what Greenspan and Bernanke was saying when they were Fed chairman, as the dot-com bubble was exploding, as the housing bubble was exploding, and how they misinterpreted what was going on. And Greenspan should have known better because I first read his essay on gold and economic freedom in 1969, and boy, did that open my eyes when I was a year out of college that. We have a real problem in this country. And then 2 years later, what happened? Nixon severed the link between the dollar and gold.
Yeah.
And that's when I read Atlas Shrugged in 1971 by Ayn Rand that talks about the breakdown of society because of government spending, government regulation, and money printing.
I just put them both in there. Why the Federal Reserve sucks and the boom navigating the boom bust cycle. For and then for print again. There's a Thomas Sowell quote, not the one everyone knows. There are no solutions, only trade offs. But it's another quote that I've actually only seen relatively recently, and there's I guess some kind of irony in that. But it's like along the lines of the biggest. I don't know anything about Thomas Sowell. For all I know, I'm quoting a Nazi. I have no idea. But a good quote's a good quote. Get over it. Said something about the biggest disservice our higher education institutions have done is give young people a confidence to make sweeping declarations
Mm,
about a society of a world that they have just begun to experience. And it's on a more simpler one, it's the quote, by the time you realize your dad was right, you'll have a son that thinks you're wrong. Right. And so, even in my short life, even in this short podcast life of 3 years, I have to look at things as recently as 2020 and go, yes, they printed a bunch of money. I have no idea. I'm a biology major who's 32 doing a podcast. I don't know what I would be doing if I was in the Federal Reserve and what appeared to be a bioweapon came on the table. Maybe I would print money too. So that's something I'm like, I have to be like, I don't know what I would do, and I can't make a sweeping declaration. But that being said, with the money supply and how hyperinflation leads to totalitarianism,
yeah.
man, if I was a totalitarian in training, I might not look at that as a bad thing. I might say, yeah, that's a feature, not a bug. I want that. And then lastly, and it's it's a little bit of a joke comment, but I think there is some weight to it in that, yeah, the only thing more powerful than gold or commodities backing a fiat currency is the barrel of a gun.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
what we have done with this massive amount of money, the kind of the Bretton Woods to the gold window, what we have done with that is I took $1 million loan from Dr. Sabrin, and then I put a couple Delta Force mercenaries on my pay books, and now you're knocking on my door going, give me the $1 million.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
going, I got a couple guys with fully automatic HKs, like, get out of here. It's kind of law of the jungle. I mean, is there some, someone like yourself who is so well versed in this, is there some value to that of like, yeah, the golden rule, he who has the gold makes the rules. Yeah, whoever said that, did they have aircraft carriers and F-35s? And I'm not saying it's right. I'm not defending this. I'm just purely cold. Let's just remove all emotions from it and just examine it as a problem on a tabletop game. You have a military that wraps around the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And talk about the military. I recently saw a map that is fascinating. If I should send it to you, Tommy. It is a phenomenal map.
Our
This is
bases.
why Russia and China are so concerned about U.S. foreign policy. There are military bases on the perimeter of China and Russia. Can you imagine if we had Russian and Chinese military bases in Canada, Mexico, Cuba,
I'm going to text you
Central
a book
America,
right
and
now.
South America? The American people would go nuts, and rightfully so. And so when I saw that map, I said, this explains why Russia and China are very nervous about having U.S. military aircraft and bases and aircraft carriers and atomic weapons so close to their country.
I just
One of my
texted.
favorite, going back to Thomas Sowell, by the way, he was a Marxist when he was a young man and then
Yeah.
became a free market economist. One of my favorite quotes from Thomas Sowell is the first law of economics is scarcity. There's not enough of everything to go around for everyone. The first law of politics is to ignore the first law of economics. And to
It's
me,
pretty
that
good. It's
just
pretty
sums
good.
it all up. And
Yeah.
there's another great quote from Thomas Jefferson. Let's see if I can remember correctly. To compel a man to furnish funds for the propagation of ideas he abhors is sinful and tyrannical.
Yeah, and it's also what a central bank is more dangerous to the United States than a standing army.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, these are great quotes from Jefferson, from
All great
economists.
guys named Thomas. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
am I in that hall because my name's Tommy? I'm not going to say I'm not.
no, I've collected quotes over the years, and I have I should send you. I have about 7, 8 pages of quotes, which to me
Please do.
just I mean, we have the one from Smedley Butler,
War is a
General.
racket.
Yeah, War is a Racket. He wrote that monograph about War is a Racket.
One of my
There are
favorite
quotes from
quotes.
presidents, from economists, from commentators that capture the essence of what's wrong with America today and throughout the ages. I mean, you have the old right from the 1930s seeing FDR's economic policies similar to the fascism of Mussolini. So when people call Trump a fascist, that train left a long time ago. It was the 1930s that really embedded fascistic policies in the United States. And in 1975, there was a wonderful book called America's Emerging Fascist Economy. That's nearly 50 years ago. This is long before Trump in politics, long before Reagan. And so economists were analyzing the American economy and American politics, and they said, listen, this is no different than what Mussolini did in Italy of the merging of corporate and state power. And RFK Jr. is talking about the same thing. And that's why the media don't want to give him a platform, because he's challenging exactly what they're defending, which is fascist economic policies.
Well, the media is our scribes for the deep state, so it makes at least they are being true to their nature of being soulless, spineless, ballless machines. Yeah, and what was I gonna say? So I texted you a book called Base Nation by David Vine. He's a professor, I forget where, I think Georgetown. I watched a video back in 2021, I think, and it was this guy's got a pretty big YouTube channel. I don't know a whole lot about him. Covers all sorts of odd topics, and one of them was just how would you feel? Basically kind of goes into the Cuban Missile Crisis. How would you feel about bases on our borders? Blah blah blah. And then he goes, well, now how would you feel about well, what do you think about us having bases in Germany and Japan and blah blah blah? And then he brings on this guy David Vine, and I found him and I emailed him, and he came on my show. And his book is great, and it's about the United States bases around the world. And you go,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have a little empathy. And yeah, and it's very easy to go, well, they're China, they're Russia, we gotta crush them. I get that, but I mean, you have to have some rational empathy and go. And this is what I always tell people: is if you're really having trouble kind of approaching an idea that maybe makes your ideology look bad and makes someone else look good, then don't vocalize it. Just say it in the quietness of your own mind. Right? I remember the priest would always say, during confession at Catholic school, if you've done something and you really don't even want to talk about it, you don't have to tell me, but just tell God inside your head, okay, I was mean to my
Mm-hmm.
little brother and I don't want to tell you that. And it kind of drops the ego and allows you to really approach it in your mind. So to anyone listening, I would say don't even say it out loud. You don't have to admit that maybe you're wrong. Just say it in your head. How would you actually feel if there were Chinese operating bases, airstrips in Mexico City or Ontario? I mean, how would you actually feel about that?
Well,
Well,
we are, Tommy, in 1962,
yes.
long time ago, the Cuban Missile Crisis. I remember vividly my
Yes.
friend and I talking about a possible nuclear strike on New York City with a mushroom cloud over Manhattan.
Yeah.
Um, Kennedy rightly said no missiles in Cuba, and we nearly had World War III because of that. And thank goodness there were back channels between the United States
Khrushchev
and,
and Bobby
and the
and yeah.
Soviet Union. In addition, everyone should watch JFK's commencement address at American University in June of 1963, when he basically said, we have to have empathy with the Soviet Union. We are in a small planet called Earth, and if we miscalculate, we're gonna end civilization as we know it.
Mm.
And and that August we had the test ban treaty, the nuclear test ban
Mm-hmm.
treaty, and then in November he was assassinated
Yeah.
60 years ago. So you look at what happened in that time period. In fact, when I spoke at the Mises caucus of the Libertarian Party in Austin nearly 2 weeks ago, I said, in my lifetime, I think the JFK assassination was probably the most important event because it gave us LBJ as president, who gave us Vietnam and the Great Society programs, which sort of embedded in the American political system endless wars. And that's what we've had with the neocons taking over American foreign policy of both Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, and even he pointed out, the very word secrecy is repugnant, in a free and open society, guerrillas by night, not marching armies by day, or however his Boston accent went. And yeah, I mean, that's a guy that, and I think that's why people even like my mom. I never met my dad's parents, but my mom's parents, who have since passed. But I mean, as I was telling you before we start recording, I mean, the most like hardcore Roman Catholic, Irish Republican,
Mhm.
you know, greatest generation, what, the Brady Bunch. I mean, really just from like a Norman Rockwell painting.
Yep.
And they voted for JFK. And the idea that people that entrenched in their belief systems were able to go, I'm voting for this Democrat, shows who he was. And it's a guy that, I mean, really kind of put it all on the table. And unlike Trump, I mean, didn't back. I mean, Trump was accused of being a Manchurian candidate. Kennedy stood his ground when Titans, Curtis LeMay,
Yeah.
the Dulles brothers, James Jesus Angleton, J. Edgar, when they we're going in, we're gonna nuke Cuba, we're gonna go. He stood his ground.
Yep.
And like, yeah, that's the mettle of like a real leader. That's
And
the
it
mettle
cost
of
him
someone.
his life.
1,000% cost him his life. And I mean, even then, I don't know if you ever heard those phone calls of him to Eisenhower, like during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Mm.
And it's like you could tell that was the only guy he really trusted. And he calls
Mm.
him general. And because I mean, that's the guy that left the previous Oval Office and was like, hey, by the way, beware the military industrial
Mm.
complex, both
One of the most
warranted and
important
unwarranted.
farewell addresses in our lifetime.
Yeah. And then to draw that back, and I kind of want to pull into this when you brought up General Smedley Butler. So that was January 17th, 1961.
One.
60?
Yeah,
60. Yeah,
61.
61. Yeah, because all right. You go back 28 years and you have General Smedley Butler, the most decorated Marine of all time. And there's a great book about him called Gangsters of Capitalism by Stephen Katz. And then I think there's another one, I don't remember which. And then there's his book, which is more of a pamphlet, War as a Racket. And then there's The Plot to Seize the White House. And I can never remember
Yeah.
who it's by. But I mean, this is a guy that, I mean, late 1890s, 1900s, doing all these sort of incursions, the Caribbean incursions, the
Yeah.
Chinese incursions, the rebellions, and all that stuff. And this is a guy that rose through the ranks. And then you see him come out at the very end and go, I used to have a hunch that war was a racket. Now I know. And it's a great couple paragraph statement. And he finally ends with, Al Capone operated on 3 counties. I could give him a lesson. I operated on 3 continents.
Yep.
And when you look at that, and you go, well, that was 28 years before Eisenhower. And you go, well, how far back does this go? And this may sound like I'm starting to paint this whole conspiracy thing. No, I'm really not. What I'm trying to look at is like, well, what is the reason for everything we're seeing around? What are
Mhm.
these? You hear a sound and there's an echo, right? I'm in a city and I can hear sounds. I know I'm not hearing the sound as it happens. It's a motorcycle and the sound's bouncing off the buildings. You have to go back to the source. So it's not Eisenhower. I mean, it's not even Smedley. And you go back to, and I think it was Woodrow Wilson
Mhm.
who said in 1919, and he goes, "There's let me pull it up so I don't butcher it." But the reasoning is you have to go, well, what are the reasons for the Federal Reserve? What are the reasons for endless wars? And you have to keep going back till you find the very. You can take Tylenol to mask something, but you have to find like where is the splinter above a secret? Or above a whisper. This is how I always find it. It was Woodrow Wilson, and this is like what 20 years before Smedley Butler. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive. that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. I mean, you are like a detective, you're starting to pick up little fingerprints.
Yeah.
And I think it explains a lot of where we are now, and that there is, call whatever you want, the deep state, the Illuminati, a bunch of rich guys. I don't know. But there is something that seems to reach back over a century. And it is this interlocked thing that wants total control over money,
Yeah.
that wants total control over media and communication.
Yeah.
And they want us in a state of perpetual warfare. And does that make it better? No. But it allows you to step away from this is Biden's fault.
No, this has been going on literally for more than 100 years. You can go back to the Mexican-American War, and you can go back to the beginning of the Republic, where the Hamiltonians wanted a central bank because they saw that was going to benefit their cronies in business at the time. And so this is all part of the historical record. I mean, Tom DiLorenzo has written about Hamilton. He's written about Lincoln. So it's basically a bipartisan problem we have in America. And in 1971, when Nixon did wage price controls, Tommy, I concluded we don't have a two-party system in America. We have a one-party system. I called it the Washington Party. Now people are calling it the Unit Party, but I should have trademarked it the Washington Party, because they're two sides of the same coin, because spending keeps on going up. Spending right now is at an all-time high, I think, in peacetime of our GDP. So the Biden administration and the Trump administration has taken us to the levels of spending that is really in the stratosphere, plus where we could be on the brink of a nuclear war. And you've got to give Putin credit, which of course is verboten to say, that with the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, which is an act of war by the United States, Putin has every right, based upon international law, to attack American interests in Europe. We are headed for a disaster if we don't turn things around. And that's why, Tommy, this is the most pessimistic I've been about America in my lifetime, because I went through the Cuban Missile Crisis, I went through Vietnam, we went through Watergate, we went through the double-digit inflation and the gas lines of the 80s, we went through the two Gulf Wars, but now we have the welfare warfare state on steroids. I mean, it is unbelievable how many people depend upon a government check in order to get through the day, to get through the week. It's just another example of how big government has gotten and how much financial dependence we have in America instead of financial independence. And that's the thing I've been pushing for decades, is that we had political independence in 1776, and it cost the American colonists huge amount of blood and treasure to be politically independent. Now we need to have not only financial independence, but we need to have peaceful relations around the world. And that's something that Kennedy realized was critical 60 years ago, because if we don't have peaceful relations with nuclear powers, we're going to stumble into World War III. And as Albert Einstein famously said, World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. So we've got to be vigilant, as Jefferson said. To be a free society, we have to be vigilant, because there are people that are intoxicated with money and power. And that's okay if you believe it should be. If you want to have money using the free market approach, that's great. But power is something that no one should have, which is ruling over other people. And I'll leave you with a very important concept that I think is important to express my libertarianism, that if it's illegal for someone to do something, it should also be illegal for government officials to do something. So we can't print money, they should be able to print money. We can't go to fight wars, they should be able to fight wars. We can't tax anybody, the government should be able to tax anybody. That's why I wrote Tax-Free 2000, of how we could have a prosperous, peaceful, tax-free America. And that was published nearly 30 years ago. So I'm trying to do the best I can, Tommy, and I really appreciate this opportunity to explain to people, and you have a good handle on this, that peace and prosperity means what? Less government intervention in the economy, And that means downsizing the federal budget, deregulating the economy, having peaceful relations around the world. And diplomacy should be the foremost way we deal with other countries. And as you pointed out, empathy. What do people around the world want? I think the same thing that we want here in America. We want to live, we want to be able to walk down the street without getting assaulted. We want to be able to drive our cars without getting carjacked. Women should be able to walk down the street without being assaulted and possibly raped. I mean, these are the things that everyone wants, except, of course, the small number of criminals that are out there. And I have a pretty radical suggestion for that, Tommy, and that is, if you commit a violent crime, you should be exiled. In other words, we basically put you in another part of the world where you are no longer a threat to the American people. And I've advocated that for a long, long time, and that's called common sense, because the last thing we want to do is house people in prisons where they learn to become better criminals.
You're better man than me. I'd say execute them or send them to Mars. But, you know, and that is, and it, you know, on one hand, a statement like we all just want peace and prosperity, it does seem so like 20-year-old smoking pot in a dorm. But after this hour conversation, and we're going into the intricacies of Smelly Butler and gold-backed currency and blah, 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 you do kind of come full circle and go, well, what does the average dude want? What's the average 32-year-old guy like me want?
Yeah.
And who maybe grew up in Vietnam? Yeah, man. Probably like a girlfriend. Probably like to be able to cook dinner. Maybe has ambitions. I'm not completely normal. I want to build my podcast. There's a lot I want to do. But like most of my friends, probably just wants to settle down. Probably just wants a job. They're not looking to conquer the world.
No.
And again, I know this sounds kind of so cheesy, hippy dippy, but I mean, I was up at my parents' lake house this past weekend, and I was just sitting in like a chair, looking out over the lake, looking out over the mountains, and for like a brief moment, I just sort of lost all sense of the internal monologue about the 2024 election, the inflation, there's war, blah, blah, and it was just objectively looking at the mountains and the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this really is such a beautiful world.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just, and I'm not an idiot. I understand the history of man and how violent it is. But for a brief moment, you go, we're in such a, okay, we'll wrap it up with this because I know you got to go in 3 minutes. But it's like when you and your friends, I mean, in college, we would drive down to like Panama City over spring break, and it's a 7-hour drive. We're all tired, and we're all, we're getting impatient with each other, and it's, well, I paid more for the beer and you didn't buy the weed and blah blah blah, and everyone's hungover, and then you finally get to the hotel and you're all still kind of arguing, and then finally someone would be like, hey, can we all just like shut up? Like, we're in Panama, we're on the beach, we're on the 20th floor looking out in the ocean, and there's 100,000 single girls here, and we're 21. And everyone kind of looking around each other and be like, we're in the Garden of Eden right now. And just all the bullshit would drop. And man, like, it's just so sunny and breezy out, and there's birds chirping. It's like, this world could be such a beautiful experience. But like you said, there's a very small percentage of demons who are really kind of ruining the whole thing. And how do we fix it? I don't know. I think the very first step is probably what we're doing now, talking about it, acknowledging it. And I'd say the next most important step is to remove the tribalism. Stop screaming at your neighbor, you Republican, you Democrat, and realize, hey, you and I are much more alike than the millionaires and billionaires in DC. You and I have maybe you vote left and I vote right. We both are in the same apartment building, go to the same gym, and probably make around the same amount of money. We have a lot more in common. And it can be a beautiful world. It really can be. It is a beautiful world, but it can continue to be a beautiful world. And I don't know what the solution is. Talking about it, reading about it, not being ignorant. I don't know. I don't know what the cure is.
Well, the thing is, again, given human history, we know that a trend in motion stays in motion until it stops. So we've been on this train of this trend for decades, and it's going to stop one day. I don't know when. I have some idea of when it's going to stop. I think it could stop by the end of this decade, because the distortions of the welfare warfare state are building up, that eventually people will, quote, revolt against it. And I hope enough people have common sense from across the political spectrum to say what we have today is not working. There's a better way of doing things. And this is why Michael Heiss at the Mises Caucus at the Libertarian Party said we've got to decentralize decision making in America. And I think that's one of the keys, is that everything we do is done at the local level, whether it's in small town in Maine or my town in Florida. Everything we want is at the local level, and a few things, and hopefully the borders are protected, and we can live our lives without getting edicts and mandates from Washington, D.C.
I'm not hopeless. That's not the move. The move is not to be full of despair. I do think it can. If you look at all of human history, it always just seems so bad. But at the same time, it undeniably gets better with every passing decade and century. It's a weird thing where you go, it's all so evil, but it's better today than it ever has been in terms of rights, in terms of relative safety, in terms of number of deaths per capita in warfare and crime. I mean, it might just be like we got to keep at it, and it's a worthwhile fight. It really is. It's a good fight to have.
Well, as part of the baby boomer generation, the first wave of the baby boomers, I'm doing this for your generation and future generations, because the clock is ticking for me and my generation, and we have to leave something better than we found it.
And I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't really want kids, but all my cousins and siblings are starting to have kids. And I do think about it. I'm like, I've had a good time. I'm 32. My life can end any moment. I'm 32. I've had a wonderful life. I hope I live till I'm 80. I've had a good time. It's cool. It's whatever. I'm good with God. I got to pay it forward now. I'm like, if I've enjoyed this, someone else has to. And my dad would always say, and then we will wrap it up because I have to let you go. And I'll text you after this and we'll schedule another one. But my dad would always say, when we would come up to New England, because we're all born here, but we lived everywhere. But when we'd come up here over the summer, we'd always rent like a lake house or something. And the last day always sucked because we didn't actually enjoy it. My parents would just make us scrub the entire place. I mean, scrub, like whatever lake house we rented. And I always hated it because I was like, why does it matter? But my mom and dad would always say, leave it better than you found it.
Yep.
Just on the principle, not because we got any money back or something,
Right.
but it was the principle of leaving it better than you found it. And I genuinely, I literally in my mind, I just abbreviated as the summer rental idea, the SR. And whenever I'm doing something, I'm like, just leave it a little better than you found it. Not because you get anything back, but it's not a bad principle to live by. And I think that's maybe the move. But I know you got to run, so we'll wrap this up. Guys, please go into the description. Please go follow Dr. Sabrin on Twitter. Go to his Substack. Go to his website. Buy his books. Don't make me look bad. Don't make me look like an idiot. Go subscribe to him. Don't make me look like a bad host. I got to convince him to come back on here again, all right? And you guys, I need you guys to do that. Dr. Sabrin, thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Tommy. It's great being with you. I look forward to doing it again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And again, thank you for your patience. I will never not set an alarm when I meditate again.
That's my middle name, Patience.
Okay. All right, Dr. Sabrin. Thank you so much, sir.